The alarm clock buzzed at 5 in the morning, same as every day for the past 8 years. Hanna rolled out of her narrow bunk and pulled on her blue maintenance uniform. The fabric was rough against her skin, but she had grown used to it. She tied her long black hair into a simple ponytail and grabbed her toolkit from the metal locker. The corridors of Terran Defense Station Horizon were quiet at this hour. Only a few night shift workers moved through the dimly lit passages. Hanna liked it this way. Fewer people meant fewer questions. Fewer chances for someone to look too closely at her work or wonder why a simple maintenance tech knew so much about fighter systems. She made her way to Hangar Bay 7, where the interceptor squadrons were kept. The massive space stretched out before her, filled with sleek combat ships arranged in perfect rows. Each fighter was a masterpiece of human engineering, built for speed and deadly precision. Hanna felt her chest tighten as she looked at them. Morning. Hanna. Park Ji-won appeared beside her, carrying a datapad and looking tired. Ji-won was the hangar supervisor, a kind woman in her 40s who treated all her workers fairly. Bay 12 needs work. The pilots are complaining about sluggish responses in the left thruster system. I will check it right away, Hanna replied, keeping her voice steady and professional. She walked to Bay 12 where a Mark 7 interceptor sat waiting. The ship was beautiful in its deadly simplicity. Clean lines, powerful engines, and weapon systems that could tear through enemy armor. Like paper, Hanna ran her hand along the hull, feeling the smooth metal beneath her fingers. As she opened the maintenance panel, her hands moved without conscious thought. She had worked on thousands of ships like this. Her fingers found problems that others missed, made adjustments that improved performance beyond factory specifications, but she always made sure her improvements looked like standard maintenance work. This thruster assembly is worn, she muttered to herself, pulling out the component. The pilots have been pushing too hard in training. While she worked, voices echoed from across the hangar. A group of pilots had arrived for their morning briefing. Hanna recognized the loud, confident voice of Kim Do-hyun, the squadron leader. He was young, skilled, and completely sure of himself. Everything Hanna had once been. The new recruits are hopeless, Do-hyun was saying to his wingman. Yesterday, Lee Sun-ho nearly crashed into an asteroid during basic formation flying. How did he even pass flight school? Maybe you should go easier on them, suggested another pilot. Not everyone learns as fast as you did, Do-hyun laughed. In real combat, the enemy won't go easy. Better they learn now or wash out before they get someone killed. Hanna's hands stilled on her work. She remembered saying similar things once, back when she wore a pilot's uniform instead of maintenance coveralls, back when she believed that skill and confidence were enough to keep her squadron alive. She shook her head and focused on the thruster repair. The past was gone. She had made her choice 8 years ago, and she would stick to it. Hanna could. You look at this? Ji-won called from across the bay. She was standing beside another interceptor with a young pilot who looked frustrated. Pilot Han says his targeting system keeps drifting during combat maneuvers. Hanna gathered her tools and walked over. The pilot, Han Min-soo, was barely 25 with the eager face of someone who still believed war was glorious. He reminded Hanna painfully of the young pilot she had once led into battle. The system worked fine yesterday, Han explained. But during today's simulation, I couldn't keep a lock on target. The computer kept losing the signal. Hanna climbed into the cockpit and activated the targeting display. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, checking system responses and calibration settings. She could feel Han watching her with curious eyes. Your primary sensor array is slightly misaligned, she said after a few minutes. Probably from the high-G maneuvers you practiced yesterday. The mounting brackets need adjustment. How did you know about the high-G training? Han asked, surprised. That information is not in the flight logs. Hanna felt her stomach drop. She had made a mistake, revealed knowledge she should not have. I saw the G-force readings on the maintenance diagnostic. High stress shows up in the ship's systems. Han nodded, accepting the explanation. But Hanna noticed how his eyes lingered on her face, as if trying to remember something. She worked quickly to fix the sensor alignment, her hand steady despite her racing heart. This was exactly the kind of mistake she could not afford to make. For 8 years she had been so careful to hide her knowledge, to appear like just another maintenance worker who happened to be good with tools. "There," she said, closing the access panel. "The targeting system should work properly now." Han tested the system and smiled. "Perfect. You really know these ships inside and out. Have you ever thought about applying for pilot training? I bet you would be good at it." "No," Hana replied quickly. "I am happy with maintenance work." She climbed out of the cockpit and gathered her tools, eager to escape the conversation. But as she turned to leave, she caught sight of the tactical display showing the day's training exercise. The formation patterns made her frown. "That approach vector is wrong," she said without thinking. "What?" Han looked at the display. "What do you mean?" Hana realized she had spoken aloud again. Heat rose in her cheeks. "Nothing. I was thinking about something else." But Han was studying the tactical display with new interest. "No, tell me. What is wrong with the approach vector?" Hana hesitated. She could see the flaw clearly in the formation plan. If the pilots approached the target from that angle, they would be vulnerable to crossfire from the defensive positions. A simple adjustment to the entry point would solve the problem and reduce casualties by 60%. "I am just a maintenance tech," she said finally. "I do not know about flight tactics." Han looked disappointed but did not press the issue. Hana walked away quickly, her heart pounding. She had almost revealed too much again. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Hana worked on routine maintenance tasks, keeping her head down and her mouth shut. But she could not stop thinking about the training exercise. From her position in the hangar, she could see the tactical displays showing the pilot's progress. Just as she had predicted, the formation ran into trouble. 2 pilots had to abort their attack runs when they came under heavy simulated fire. Another nearly collided with his wingman while trying to evade the defensive systems. Do-hyun's voice crackled over the comm system, frustrated and angry. "Reform and try again, and this time think before you fly." But Hana knew the problem was not with the pilot's skills. It was with the plan itself. The approach vector left them exposed, and no amount of individual talent could overcome a flawed strategy. She watched the second attempt fail just as badly as the first. The pilots were getting discouraged, making mistakes they would not normally make. Do-hyun was pushing them harder, which only made things worse. Finally, she could not stand it anymore. She walked over to where Ji-won was monitoring the exercise. "The pilots are approaching from the wrong angle," Hana said quietly. "If they came in from 30 degrees lower, they would avoid the crossfire zone." Ji-won looked at her with surprise. "How do you know that?" I used to watch a lot of combat footage before I started working here." It was not exactly a lie. She had watched plenty of combat footage, most of it from her own gun camera recordings. Ji-won studied the tactical display, then nodded slowly. "You might be right. Let me suggest it to the flight controller." A few minutes later, the exercise was reset with the new approach vector. This time, the attack succeeded perfectly. The pilots completed their runs with minimal damage and high accuracy. Even Do-hyun sounded pleased over the comm. "Much better," he announced. "I knew you had it in you." Hana felt a familiar mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She had helped save lives today, just like she used to do as a pilot. But she had also taken another step toward exposing her secret. How long could she keep hiding who she really was? As the day shift ended, Hana cleaned her tools and prepared to return to her quarters. The hangar was quiet again, filled only with the soft hum of the ship's life support systems. She took one last look at the fighters, their sleek forms gleaming under the overhead lights. 8 years ago, she had walked away from ships like these. 8 years ago, she had decided that Lieutenant Commander Lee Hana, the ghost of Proxima, was too dangerous to exist. The woman who had saved colonies and defeated impossible odds had died in the flames of her last battle. But sometimes, on quiet nights like this, she wondered if she had made the right choice. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity needed every defender it could get. She shook her head and turned away. That life was over. She was just a maintenance tech now, and that was how it would stay. If only she knew how wrong she was. The emergency alarm shattered the morning quiet like a hammer through glass. Red lights flashed throughout station horizon as the piercing sound echoed down every corridor. Hana dropped her wrench and looked up from the engine she was repairing. "All personnel to emergency stations," announced Commander Choi Minho over the station-wide communication system. His voice was calm, but carried an edge that made Hana's blood run cold. "This is not a drill. Unknown vessels detected approaching our position." The hangar bay erupted into controlled chaos. Pilots ran to their ships while maintenance crews scrambled to complete pre-flight checks. Hana had seen this dance many times before, but something felt different today. The tension in the air was thicker, more desperate. "Hana, get to the observation deck," Ji-won called out as she ran past with a data pad. "We need all technical staff monitoring ship systems from there." Hana followed the crowd of technicians to the large observation window that looked out into space. What she saw there made her heart stop. Massive ships hung in the darkness beyond the station, their hulls unlike anything she had ever seen. They were not human vessels. The alien ships were enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest human battle cruiser. Their design was strange and flowing, like they had been grown rather than built. Dark metal surfaces rippled with patterns of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. There were 12 of them, arranged in a perfect formation that spoke of military discipline. "My God," whispered one of the technicians beside her. "They are huge." Commander Choi's voice came over the speakers again. "Attention, unknown vessels. This is Commander Choi Minho of Terran Defense Station Horizon. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came immediately, transmitted directly to every screen on the station. The alien who appeared was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. When he spoke, his voice was cold and full of contempt. "I am Kel Voss of the Vorthon Collective. You will surrender all military assets immediately. Your expansion into our territory ends now." Commander Choi tried to maintain diplomatic protocol. "We are not aware of any territorial violations. Perhaps we can discuss this and reach an understanding." Kel Voss made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans. You spread across space like a disease, claiming worlds that do not belong to you. There will be no discussion." To demonstrate his point, he gave a command in his own language. One of the alien ships fired a beam of bright energy that struck a nearby satellite. The satellite simply vanished, turned to atoms in an instant. The display of power was clear and terrifying. "However," Kel Voss continued, "we are not without honor. Your species will be given one chance to prove you deserve to exist among the stars. We challenge your pilots to single combat. 12 trials, 1 human against 1 Vorthon fighter." The alien commander paused, his dark eyes seeming to look directly through the screen at everyone watching. "If you win more than half the trials, we will leave your territory. If you lose, your colonies will be destroyed one by one until humanity learns its place." The transmission ended, leaving the observation deck in stunned silence. Hana felt sick to her stomach. She had seen this kind of arrogance before from enemies who believed their technology made them invincible. The difference was that this time, the aliens might be right. "Sir, we have 12 of our best pilots ready for launch," came the voice of Squadron Leader Kim Do-yeon over the comm. "We can take them." But Hana could see the alien ships more clearly now. Their fighters were launching from the larger vessels, small craft that moved with impossible grace and speed. Even from this distance, she could tell they were far more advanced than anything humanity had built. "Look at how they move," she said quietly to herself. "Their acceleration, their turning radius. Those ships are at least 50 years ahead of our technology." The technician next to her heard and gave her a strange look. "How can you tell from here?" Hana realized her mistake, but it was too late to take back the words. I have studied a lot of ship designs. It is part of my job." The first trial began within an hour. Do-hyun himself took the challenge, piloting his best interceptor against a Vorthon fighter. The battle was broadcast throughout the station so everyone could watch. It was over in less than 3 minutes. The alien pilot toyed with Do-hyun like a cat playing with a mouse. Every maneuver the human tried was anticipated and countered. The Vorthon ship moved like it was reading Do-hyun's mind, always one step ahead. When the alien finally decided to end the fight, he did it with surgical precision, disabling Do-hyun's ship without destroying it. "Your pilot shows courage," Kelvos announced after Do-hyun was rescued. "But courage alone is not enough. Send your next champion." The second trial went even worse. Pilot Lee Sun-ho lasted barely 2 minutes before his ship was disabled. The third pilot, Han Min-soo, tried a different approach, using defensive tactics and trying to wear down his opponent. The Vorthon pilot adapted instantly and finished the fight in record time. By the fourth trial, panic was spreading through the station. The human pilots were skilled and brave, but they were completely outmatched. It was like watching children try to fight trained soldiers. "We need a new strategy," Commander Choi announced to his senior staff. "These aliens are more advanced than we thought." "Sir, we are running out of experienced pilots," reported Squadron Leader Park, who had taken over after Do-hyun's defeat. "And the ones we have left are losing confidence. They know they cannot win." Hana watched the fifth trial from the observation deck, her hands clenched into fists. Pilot Kim Tae-ho was trying everything he could think of, but the result was the same. The Vorthon fighter danced around him effortlessly, striking at will. "This is impossible," muttered one of the technicians. "How are we supposed to fight something like that?" "We need better ships," said another, "or better pilots." Hana closed her eyes and tried to push down the growing feeling in her chest. She had sworn she would never fly again. She had buried Lieutenant Commander Lee Hana 8 years ago for good reasons. That woman had saved people, but she had also failed them when it mattered most. But watching these young pilots die was tearing her apart. The sixth trial ended like all the others. The seventh lasted less than a minute. By the eighth trial, some of the remaining pilots were refusing to fly. They knew it was suicide. "We cannot ask them to throw their lives away," Commander Choi said during an emergency meeting. "But if we forfeit the remaining trials, humanity loses everything." "What, about emergency volunteers?" suggested someone. "Maybe some of the older pilots who retired could help." "We already checked the record," replied Ji-won, who had been pulled into the meeting as head of technical staff. "Most of our retired pilots are too old or have been out of practice too long. There is one exception, though." She hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "There are some classified files in our database. Someone with high-level pilot credentials, but the records are sealed. I would need command authorization to access them." Commander Choi nodded grimly. "Do it. At this point, we need every option we can find." While the meeting continued, Hana stood alone on the observation deck, watching the alien ships hang in space like dark omens. She thought about the young pilots who had already fallen, and the ones who would die in the remaining trials. She thought about the colonies that would burn if humanity lost this challenge. Most of all, she thought about the promise she had made to herself 8 years ago. She had sworn she would never again be responsible for other people's lives. She had sworn she would never again feel the weight of command, the burden of making decisions that meant life or death for the people who trusted her. But some promises were made to be broken. The 9th trial was about to begin when her communicator chimed. It was a message from Commander Choi himself, requesting her immediate presence in his office. Hana's heart sank. Somehow, they had found her records. As she walked through the corridors toward the command section, she could hear the sounds of the 9th trial over the speakers. Another young pilot was about to die, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But maybe, just maybe, she could stop the ones that came after. The ghost of Proxima was about to return from the dead. Commander Choi's office felt smaller than usual with so many people crowded inside. Hana stood near the door, her hands clasped behind her back, while senior officers and department heads filled every available chair. The air was thick with tension and the smell of recycled coffee. "We have lost 9 trials," Commander Choi said without introduction. His face looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few hours. 3 more losses and humanity faces extinction. I have called you all here because we are out of conventional options. He activated the wall display, showing personnel files with most of the information blocked out in black bars. Our search through classified records has revealed that we may have additional pilot resources on this station. Resources we were not aware of. Hana felt her throat tighten. She had known this moment would come eventually. 8 years of hiding was about to end. Lee Hana, Commander Choi said, turning to look directly at her. According to our records, you have been working as a maintenance technician for 8 years. But there are gaps in your file, large gaps that require the highest security clearance to access. The room was completely silent. Everyone was staring at her now, confusion clear on their faces. To them, she was just the quiet woman who fixed their ships. I need you to tell me the truth, Commander Choi continued. Are you qualified to pilot military aircraft? Hana looked around the room at all the expectant faces. She saw Ji-won, who had been kind to her for years. She saw the remaining pilots, young men and women who were trying to hide their fear. She saw the technical staff who had worked beside her, never knowing who she really was. Yes, she said quietly. I am qualified. How qualified? Pressed the commander. Hana took a deep breath. There was no point in half-truths now. I am Lieutenant Commander Lee Hana, formerly of the 7th Deep Space Fighter Wing. I served for 12 years before requesting transfer to maintenance duties. The reaction was immediate. Several people gasped. One of the younger pilots nearly fell out of his chair. Even Commander Choi looked stunned. The ghost of Proxima, whispered squadron leader. Partner, you are the ghost of Proxima. The nickname hit Hana like a physical blow. She had hoped people would forget that title, but apparently legends died harder than the people who created them. That is not a name I use anymore, she said firmly. But you are her, Park continued, his voice filled with awe. The pilot who held off the entire Kepler fleet at Proxima Station, who saved the Titan colony single-handed, who flew through the Maelstrom Nebula when everyone said it was impossible. I was a different person then, Hana replied. That was a long time ago. Commander Choi leaned forward in his chair. Why did you hide this? Why work as a maintenance tech when you could have been training our pilots, leading our squadrons? The big question she had dreaded for 8 years. Hana closed her eyes and saw the faces of her dead squadron, young pilots who had followed her into battle and never came home. She saw the burning wreckage of their ships, the memorial service where she had stood alone because she was the only survivor. Because the last time I led pilots into combat, they all died, she said simply. All of them. 12 of the best pilots humanity had ever produced, and I got them all killed because I thought I was invincible. The room fell silent again. Even the air recycling system seemed quieter than usual. The Battle of Kepler Station, said Park softly. I read the reports. You were outnumbered 30-1. No one could have saved them. I could have. Hana snapped, her carefully controlled emotions finally breaking through. I could have found a way. I always found a way before. But that time I was too slow, too stupid, too human. And 12 people died because I failed them. She turned toward the door. I will not make that mistake again. Find someone else to fly your trials. There is no one else, Commander Choi said quietly. You are our last hope. Then humanity is doomed, Hana replied without turning around. But, before she could leave, the sound of weapons fire echoed through the station's hull. The lights flickered and everyone felt the vibration of multiple impacts. What was that? Someone shouted. The answer came over the emergency communication system. All stations, this is defense control. The Vorthon fleet is attacking the Harvest colony. Long-range sensors show the colony shields failing. Estimated time until complete destruction, 4 hours. Commander Choi activated his personal communicator. This is Station Command. Get me a visual on Harvest colony. The wall display changed to show a distant view of the agricultural world that fed half the Outer Rim territories. Even from thousands of kilometers away, they could see the bright flashes of the alien attack. The colony's defensive stations were firing everything they had, but it was not enough. 2 million people, whispered Jiwan. There are 2 million people on that world. The colony transports are trying to evacuate, reported the communications officer. But they need more time. The Vorthons are targeting the civilian ships. On the display, they watched a transport vessel explode in a ball of fire. Hundreds of families gone in an instant. They are not waiting for the trials to end, realized Commander Choi. They are starting the slaughter now. Hana stood frozen, watching the destruction. She could see the tactical situation clearly in her mind. The colony had good defensive positions, but the Vorthon ships were too fast and too well armed. The defenders were fighting bravely, but they were only delaying the inevitable. Unless someone could break the Vorthon formation, unless someone could get inside their defensive perimeter and strike at their command ship. How many pilots do we have left? She asked without turning around. 3, replied Park. But after watching the trials, I do not think any of them will volunteer. What about reserve pilots? Trainers? Anyone with combat experience? You are looking at them, Commander, Choi said sadly. Everyone else died in the trials or is too injured to fly. Another transport exploded on the screen. Then another. Hana closed her eyes and felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders again. She had sworn she would never carry this burden. Again, never again be responsible for other people's lives. But some burdens could not be set down no matter how much they hurt. I will need a ship, she said quietly. What? She turned around to face the room. I said I will need a ship. The fastest interceptor you have, with full weapons and the best defensive systems. And I will need complete tactical control. No interference from command, no suggestions from other pilots. If I do this, I do it my way. Commander Choi nodded quickly. Done. Whatever you need. I also need something else, Hana continued. I need you to understand that I am not the same pilot I was 8 years ago. The ghost of Proxima was young and foolish, and believed she could save everyone. I know better now. I am going to save as many people as I can, but I cannot promise to save them all. We understand, the commander replied. Just do what you can. Hana nodded and headed for the door. I will need 30 minutes to prepare the ship and review the tactical situation. Make sure the flight deck is clear. As she walked toward the hangar, she could hear the sounds of celebration behind her. People were cheering, slapping each other on the back, acting like the war was already won. They believed the ghost of Proxima could work miracles. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But first, she was going to remind the galaxy why humanity did not go quietly into the dark. She was going to show the Vorthons what happened when they threatened human civilians. She might not be the same pilot she once was, but she was still human. And humans, she remembered, were very good at being angry. The hangar bay was chaos when she arrived. Maintenance crews were working frantically to prepare her ship, loading weapons and running diagnostics. Ji-won was supervising the work personally, making sure everything was perfect. The Mark 9 is ready, Ji-won reported. Fully armed, full fuel, all systems green. It is the fastest ship we have. Hana walked around the interceptor, checking everything with the eye of someone who had flown hundreds of different ships. The Mark 9 was beautiful, all sleek lines and deadly efficiency. But it was still just a machine. In the end, it would come down to the pilot. Hana, Ji-won said quietly, are you sure about this? Those alien ships are incredibly advanced. Even you might not be able to beat them. Hana smiled for the first time in days. It was not a happy smile. I am not planning to beat them, Ji-won. I am planning to hurt them so badly they never forget what it cost to threaten human civilians. She climbed into the cockpit and began the startup sequence. The ship came alive around her, systems humming, with power. For the first time in 8 years, she felt the familiar weight of a flight suit, the pressure of a pilot's helmet, the solid grip of flight controls under her hands. The ghost of Proxima was going hunting again. The Mark 9 interceptor launched from station horizon like a silver arrow shot into the darkness. Hana felt the familiar pressure of acceleration push her back into the pilot's seat, as the ship's engines roared to full power. Around her, the cockpit displays came alive with tactical information, target data, and navigation plots. For the first time in 8 years, she was home. Ghost actual to station control, she said into her helmet microphone. I am clear of the station and proceeding to intercept coordinates. Copy that, Ghost Actual, came the reply from Commander Choi. All tactical data is being transmitted to your ship. The Vorthan fleet is maintaining position around Harvest Colony. Their formation has not changed. Hana studied the tactical display, showing the enemy positions. 12 massive Vorthan ships arranged in a perfect sphere around the colony world. Each ship was firing systematically at the surface installations, while smaller fighters prevented any escape ships from reaching safe distance. It was a methodical, professional extermination. Ghost Actual, this is Kel Voss, came a new voice over the communication channel. The Vorthan commander sounded amused. So the humans have found one more pilot to throw away. Very well. Which of my warriors would you like to face first? Hana checked her weapon systems and targeting computers. Everything was functioning perfectly. I challenge all of them, she replied calmly. The silence on the communication channel lasted for several seconds. When Kel Voss spoke again, his voice carried a note of uncertainty. All of them? You wish to face our entire fleet alone? That is what I said. This is not how the trials work, human. Single combat only. Choose your opponent. Hana smiled grimly inside her helmet. You changed the rules when you started killing civilians. The trials are over. This is war. She cut the communication channel and accelerated toward the enemy fleet. Her ship's computer immediately began tracking the Vorthan vessels, calculating attack vectors and defensive positions. But Hana was already thinking 3 moves ahead, seeing patterns and opportunities that the computer could not understand. The first Vorthan fighter that moved to intercept her was fast, much faster than any human ship. But speed was not everything in space combat. The alien pilot came straight at her, confident in his superior technology and training. He had never fought the ghost of Proxima. Hana waited until the last possible second, then threw her ship into a spinning dive that brought her underneath the Vorthan fighter. As the alien pilot tried to follow, she reverse thrust and came up behind him, her weapons already locked on target. The first burst of plasma fire disabled the fighter's engines. The second destroyed its weapons. The third sent it spinning helplessly into space. Impossible, whispered Kel Voss over the open channel. But Hana was already moving toward the next target. 2 more fighters were coming at her from different angles, trying to catch her in a crossfire. Standard Vorthan tactics, probably very effective against most opponents. She was not most opponents. Instead of trying to evade both fighters, she accelerated directly toward one of them. The Vorthan pilot, thinking she was making a desperate attack run, prepared to meet her head-on. At the last second, Hana rolled her ship 90 degrees and fired through the gap between her opponent's weapons. The Vorthan fighter exploded in a ball of superheated gas. The second fighter tried to follow up, but Hana was already gone, using the explosion as cover to disappear into the debris field. When she emerged, she was behind the alien ship, with a perfect shot at its reactor core, 3 fighters down in less than 5 minutes. How is this possible? Demanded Kel Voss. Our pilots are the finest in the galaxy. Our ships are centuries ahead of your primitive technology. Your mistake, Hana replied as she engaged 2 more fighters simultaneously, is thinking that technology wins wars. Humans do not fight with their ships. We fight with our minds. She demonstrated by using a nearby asteroid as a slingshot, whipping around it at crushing acceleration to come up on a fighter that thought it was safely out of range. Her weapons fire caught the Vorthan pilot completely off guard. And our anger, she added as the fighter exploded. The remaining Vorthan fighters began to change their tactics, working together in larger groups and trying to use their superior numbers to overwhelm her. It was a smart strategy that should have worked against any normal pilot. But normal was not a word anyone had ever used to describe the ghost of Proxima. Hana led the fighters on a chase through the outer edges of the colony's gravity well, using debris fields and sensor shadows to break up their formation. One by one, she picked them off, using every trick she had learned in 12 years of combat. "Enough," roared Kelvos finally. "I will finish this myself." The Vorthon command ship launched a single fighter, larger and more heavily armed than the others. This one moved differently too, with the fluid grace of a master pilot rather than the mechanical precision of the previous opponents. "I am Kelvos, Supreme War Commander of the Collective Fleet," announced the alien leader. "I have destroyed 1,000 enemies in personal combat. You will not escape me as easily as you did my subordinates." Hana studied her new opponent as he approached. This fighter was indeed different. Its movements showed creativity and adaptability that the others had lacked. Kelvos was not just a commander. He was a warrior who had earned his position through skill and experience. "I am Lieutenant Commander Lee Hana," she replied formally, "and I am very tired of listening to you talk." The battle that followed was unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. Kelvos was everything he claimed to be, a master pilot, with centuries of experience and a ship that responded to his thoughts like an extension of his body. But Hana had something he could not understand. She had nothing left to lose. For 8 years she had carried the weight of her failures, the guilt of the pilots who had died under her command. Every night, she had seen their faces in her dreams. Every day she had wondered if she could have saved them by being faster, smarter, better. Now finally, she had a chance to make it right. The two fighters danced through space in a deadly ballet, each pilot pushing their ship to the absolute limits of performance. Kelvos used every advanced technique in the Vorthon military handbook, maneuvers that had defeated countless enemies over the centuries. Hana threw the handbook away and improvised. When the Vorthon commander tried to use his ship's superior acceleration to get behind her, she cut her engines completely and let momentum carry her forward while she spun to face him. When he attempted to use the colony's gravity well to slingshot around for an attack, she was already there waiting, having calculated his trajectory 3 moves ahead. "You fight like no human I have studied," Kelvos admitted during a brief pause in the battle. "Where did you learn these techniques?" "I learned them from the people who died because I was not good enough to save them," Hana replied. "They taught me that being perfect is not enough. Sometimes you have to be impossible." She proved her point by doing something that violated every law of physics her ship's computer understood. Using the gravitational interaction between the colony world and its 3 moons, she managed to accelerate in 4 different directions simultaneously, creating a flight path that her targeting computer insisted was mathematically impossible. Kelvos, following the impossible path, found himself exactly where Hana wanted him. For the first time in the battle, she had a clear shot at his ship's most vulnerable spot, but instead of firing, she opened a communication channel. "Surrender," she said simply. "Your fighters are destroyed. Your demonstration of superiority has failed, and you are beaten. Call off the attack on the colony and withdraw your fleet." "I do not surrender to inferior species," Kelvos replied with cold dignity. "Then you will die like one," Hana said and pulled the trigger. The plasma burst struck Kelvos's ship squarely in the reactor housing. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the fighter began to come apart, its advanced hull plating peeling away like flower petals in a hurricane. But the explosion Hana expected never came. Instead, an escape pod ejected from the dying ship just before it broke apart completely. The pod transmitted an automatic distress signal as it drifted away from the wreckage. Hana could have destroyed the pod easily. She had every right to after what the Vorthons had done to the colony, but she let it drift. "This is Kelvos," came a transmission from the escape pod. The alien commander's voice was different now, thoughtful instead of arrogant. "I have never been defeated in single combat. In 800 years of warfare, no enemy has ever outflown me." "I am not your enemy," Hana replied. "I am just someone who was in your way. The human species is more formidable than our intelligence suggested," Kelvos continued. "We will not make this mistake again. The collective fleet is withdrawing from your territory." Around the colony, the massive Vorthon ships began to move away from their attack positions. The bombardment of the surface installations stopped, and the civilian transports that had been trapped in orbit were suddenly free to escape. However, Kelvos added, this matter is not finished. The collective will remember what happened here today. You have made powerful enemies, Ghost of Proxima. And you have learned why humans do not make good victims, Hana replied. The Vorthan fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving only debris and the lingering radiation from their weapons. The colony was saved, the civilians were safe, and humanity had earned a measure of respect from a species that had considered them barely worthy of notice. But as Hana turned her ship back toward Station Horizon, she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of species like the Vorthons, advanced civilizations that saw humanity as upstart primitives to be controlled or eliminated. They would all learn the same lesson eventually. Humans might not have the best technology or the longest history among the stars, but they had something that could not be programmed into a computer or learned from a textbook. They had the absolute refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. The Ghost of Proxima was going home, but she would not be hiding anymore. The galaxy needed to know that humanity was here to stay. 3 days after the battle, Station Horizon buzzed with activity unlike anything seen in years. News of the victory over the Vorthon Collective had spread throughout human space, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about the mysterious pilot who had saved Harvest Colony. Hana tried to avoid the attention by returning to her maintenance duties, but it was impossible to hide anymore. Every time she walked through the corridors, people stopped and stared. Some whispered excitedly to their friends. Others simply watched her pass with expressions of awe and gratitude. She hated every minute of it. You cannot keep pretending this did not happen, Ji-won said as they worked together on a damaged fighter in Hangar Bay 7. The entire galaxy knows who you are now. I never wanted the galaxy to know, Hana replied, tightening a bolt with more force than necessary. I was happy being invisible. But you were not happy, Ji-won pointed out gently. I worked with you for 8 years, remember? You thought you were hiding your pain, but I could see it every day. You were dying inside, carrying all that guilt. Hana's hand stilled on her tools. It was true, though she had never admitted it to herself. Every day had been a struggle against the memories, every night filled with dreams of pilots she had failed to save. The pain is still there, she said quietly. Saving the colony does not bring back my squadron. No, Ji-won agreed. But maybe it prevents other squadrons from dying needlessly. Maybe it gives young pilots like Han Min-soo a chance to grow old and have families of their own. Before Hana could respond, the hangar's communication system crackled to life. Lieutenant Commander Lee Hana to Commander Choi's office immediately. Priority Alpha. Hana sighed and put down her tools. What do you think they want now? Probably to give you a medal and ask you to pose for recruitment posters, Ji-won said with a slight smile. But when Hana arrived at the command center, she found something much more serious waiting for her. The main tactical display showed a 3-dimensional map of local space, with dozens of red icons scattered across multiple star systems. What am I looking at? She asked. Long-range sensor data from the past 72 hours, Commander Choi replied grimly. It seems word of our victory has spread beyond just human space. Each red icon represented an alien fleet, some larger than the Vorthan force they had just defeated. They were positioned at the edges of human territory, apparently waiting and watching. They are testing us, realized Hana. Seeing if what happened with the Vorthons was just luck, or if humanity really has the ability to defend itself. That is our assessment as well, agreed the commander. Intelligence estimates that at least 6 different species are considering aggressive action against human colonies. They view us as a potential threat that needs to be eliminated before we become too powerful. Hana studied the tactical display more carefully. The alien fleets were positioned to strike at the most vulnerable human worlds, places with large civilian populations and minimal defenses. If they all attacked simultaneously, humanity would not have enough ships or pilots to stop them. What does Terran Command want me to do about it? She asked. Commander Choi activated another display showing official orders with the seal of Earth Defense Command. You are being recalled to active duty with the rank of Wing Commander. Your mission is to organize a new squadron of elite pilots and prepare humanity's defense against multiple alien threats. I work alone, Hana said immediately. I do not lead squadrons anymore. Find someone else. There is no one else, the commander replied patiently. The pilots who survived the Vorthon trials are good, but they are not exceptional. We need someone who can train them to be extraordinary. We need someone who can turn ordinary humans into legends. I am not a teacher. I am barely a pilot anymore. You destroyed an entire enemy fleet by yourself 3 days ago. You outflew a warrior who had never been defeated in 800 years of combat. You are exactly what humanity needs right now. Hana turned away from the displays, but she could still feel the weight of all those red icons pressing down on her. 6 alien species, dozens of fleets, thousands of ships, and humanity had maybe 100 combat-ready pilots spread across 20 star systems. The math was simple and terrifying. Even if I agreed, she said slowly, it would not matter. You cannot train pilots to do what I did. That kind of flying requires instincts that take decades to develop. We do not have decades. We have 6 months, Commander Choi said quietly. Intelligence believes that is how long the alien species will spend evaluating the threat we represent. After that, they